Welcome to the Thinking Stack. Today we're looking at something really fundamental, something that affects all of us. How not getting enough water impacts you.
Yeah, and we're going to use our 7-layer integrated thinking stack framework to really, unpack it.
It's actually quite likely that even as you're listening right now, you might be a little dehydrated.
Mm-hmm. Not talking about severe dehydration, of course, but just enough to maybe slow your brain down a bit without you even realizing it.
Yeah, like think about those mornings when you wake up feeling a bit grumpy or off. Or that brain fog that sometimes hits.
Or just struggling to remember something simple.
Exactly. Could that really just be about, water?
Well, it's pretty surprising, but research, I think it was back in 2011, showed that losing just 1 to 2% of your body's water can actually start messing with your cognitive function.
1 to 2%. That sounds like almost nothing.
It really isn't much fluid loss at all.
Okay, so this isn't going to be your standard drink 8 glasses a day chat. We want to go a bit deeper, right?
Right. We want to explore the really wide-ranging effects that maybe people don't connect to hydration.
Okay, so let's start with layer 1, cognitive cleanse.
Perfect. So there's this common idea, right? I'll just drink when I'm thirsty. What's wrong with that?
Well, the thing is, research from 2018 pointed out that by the time you actually feel thirsty, you're probably already past that 1 to 2% dehydration mark.
Ah, so your body's alarm system is a bit slow off the mark.
Exactly. Your brain's likely already feeling the effects before you even register thirst.
And it's not just a feeling like being a bit sluggish. There are actual measurable changes. MRI studies have shown dehydration can physically shrink brain tissue volume.
Like physically shrink.
Yeah, particularly in areas like the frontal cortex, the bit you need for planning, attention, solving problems. That research came out around 2011, too.
Wow. So being even slightly low on water means the very part of our brain we rely on for clear thinking is, well, smaller?
That's what the science suggests. And this mild dehydration, that 1 to 2%, it really does impact how well your brain works. That same 2011 study found things like working memory and speed can drop by roughly 25%.
25%. That's huge.
It is a significant hit. And it's not just memory.
Right. What else?
Well, other research from 2012 indicated your decision-making accuracy and speed also take a dive when you're mildly dehydrated.
Okay, so you make worse decisions slower.
Pretty much. And on top of that, work from 2013 found you're likely to feel more mentally tired, more confused, just from that small fluid deficit.
It's like your brain's just struggling, running on empty.
That's a good way to put it. And another review from 2005 noted that even slight dehydration can trigger headaches and just generally make your thinking less sharp.
What about mood? Because I know I get irritable sometimes if I haven't had enough water. Is that linked too?
Oh, definitely. That 2013 study also found dehydration can cause a pretty massive spike up to 60% in cortisol levels.
Cortisol.
The very one. So, yeah, dehydration can directly make you feel more anxious and stressed.
60% increase.
Yes.
So that feeling of being on edge or that underlying anxiety, it could literally just be thirst.
It's a massive contributing factor. Research from 2012 specifically linked mild dehydration to increased irritability, fatigue, confusion, and anxiety. Another study backed this up, showing tasks felt harder and people felt more tired and anxious when dehydrated, even if they weren't doing heavy exercise.
Huh. Makes you wonder, doesn't it? How often do we think, oh, I just lack motivation today, when maybe our body is just screaming for water?
That's a really interesting point. Sometimes what feels like a willpower issue might actually be a basic metabolic need not being met. Hydration is fundamental.
This idea isn't entirely new, is it? I feel like ancient wisdom traditions talked about the mind and body connection.
You're absolutely right. Take the Bhagavad Gita. It talks about the uncontrolled mind being like an enemy. Now imagine trying to control your thoughts when your hippocampus, which is key for memory, is literally a bit dehydrated. It's fighting an uphill battle.
Right. And Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic, always talked about keep the mind sharp and ready. Hard to do if your brain's actually losing volume, I guess.
Precisely. Or look at Ayurveda, the ancient Indian system. The Charaka Samhita text highlights proper hydration as foundational for health, digestion, and crucially, clear thinking. Neglecting water creates imbalance.
Even Buddhist teachings, right? Something about clear perception.
Exactly. The Satipatthana Sutta emphasizes that mindfulness, clear awareness, needs both a clear body and a clear mind. And while good hydration is pretty essential for that clarity.
Okay, so wrapping up layer 1. Being dehydrated, even just a little bit, doesn't just make you thirsty. It makes you cognitively slower, less intelligent in the moment, more stressed, and it actually impacts your brain structure.
That sums it up well. It shrinks the very organ you need to solve problems. The research is pretty clear. Even mild dehydration is a serious cognitive risk factor that many of us probably experience without realizing.
It really seems like a lot of us are maybe confused or just underestimate how crucial hydration is for thinking clearly and staying emotionally stable.
Absolutely. Which actually leads us nicely into layer 2, moral intelligence.
Okay, how does drinking water connect to ethics?
Well, moral intelligence in the ITS framework is about discerning right from wrong, considering our duties, our responsibilities, both to ourselves and, importantly, to others.
Right.
So the argument here is, if you let yourself become dehydrated to the point where your performance drops, especially in roles where your performance affects other people, could that be seen as, well, an ethical lapse?
That's a challenging thought. Like failing to perform your duties properly because you didn't drink enough water.
Exactly. Think about the Bhagavad Gita again, the concept of dharma or duty. If your duty requires you to be sharp, maybe you're a doctor, a pilot, a parent making decisions, showing up cognitively impaired because you neglected basic hydration, could be framed as failing that duty.
So being too busy to grab a drink isn't just a personal health choice if your fog potentially harms someone else.
That's the idea. And Stoicism, with Marcus Aurelius, stressed the ethical duty to maintain a sharp, rational mind. Are we fulfilling that if we let something as controllable as dehydration cloud our judgment?
So walking into an important meeting or making a big family decision while feeling fuzzy because you skipped water, that's not just suboptimal for you, it's potentially irresponsible towards others.
It could be argued that way, yes. When dehydration leads to errors at work, in relationships, in any decision impacting others, you've moved beyond just feeling bad yourself. There are ethical consequences.
This puts a real weight on people in critical roles, doesn't it? Doctors, first responders, pilots. Their hydration is part of their professional responsibility.
You could definitely see it that way. The cognitive and psychomotor impairments shown in studies mean dehydration-related errors in these fields are, frankly, ethically problematic outcomes.
What about closer to home? In our relationships? Is there an ethical dimension there too?
I think so. Look at Carol Gilligan's work on the ethics of care, focusing on our responsibilities within relationships. We know dehydration increases irritability, impatience, emotional volatility.
Yeah, we talked about that cortisol spike.
Exactly. So snapping at your partner, being short with your kids, losing patience with colleagues because you're dehydrated that damages relationships, it undermines that ethic of care.
So taking care of your own state, including hydration, becomes part of being responsible in your relationships.
It's a fundamental aspect, you could argue. Maintaining your own health and clarity is part of how you show up for others.
It's quite a thought, isn't it? How much low-level friction, maybe in families or workplaces, could be linked back to just chronic, mild dehydration, making people less patient, less stable.
It's likely a contributing factor we often overlook. And ancient wisdom touches on this too. Marcus Aurelius saw maintaining your physical and mental health as almost an act of gratitude for existence, a responsibility.
And Aristotle, he talked about virtue as habitual action. Maybe consistent hydration is a kind of foundational habit for ethical conduct.
That's a great connection. If virtue requires consistent right action and dehydration impairs your ability to act rightly or clearly, then managing hydration becomes fundamental. Ayurveda echoes this to good health, and a clear mind are duties to self and community.
Okay, so the core of layer 2 is staying hydrated isn't just good for you. It's arguably an ethical imperative because cognitive impairment has real consequences for others.
Precisely. Neglecting it can be seen as irresponsible, especially when it impacts your duties or harms your relationships through increased emotional volatility.
Ethical clarity requires cognitive clarity. Makes sense.
So hydration becomes fundamentally ethical.
Right, let's push out further now to layer 3. Systemic foresight. Beyond the personal and ethical, what are the wider system-level consequences?
Okay, systemic foresight is about understanding those longer-term ripple effects. How does something like individual hydration, or lack thereof, cascade through larger systems?
So my personal water bottle habits have societal implications, really?
Well, let's look at the physiological systems first. Chronic dehydration puts immediate stress on your kidneys. Research links it to increased risk of kidney stones and UTIs, which over time could contribute to chronic kidney problems.
Okay, so direct health system impact there. What else?
Cardiovascular system, too.
Yeah.
Dehydration makes blood thicker, increases heart rate. Studies suggest this contributes to higher blood pressure risk and chronic strain, potentially increasing the risk of heart disease and stroke down the line.
Wow. So consistently being a bit low on fluids has these slow, accumulating effects on major organs.
Exactly. Then there's the cognitive piece we discussed. Reduced memory, focus, that translates to errors, lower productivity in the workplace. Research has quantified this impact on work performance.
And that has knock-on effects, right? Economic costs, safety issues.
Absolutely. If you aggregate that across a population, you see measurable impacts on productivity. Plus, there's the increased burden on healthcare systems dealing with those kidney stones, UTIs, cardiovascular issues we mentioned. It all adds up.
Are there longer-term societal effects we should think about, like future generations?
Potentially, yes. Some research suggests dehydration can negatively impact cognitive development and learning in children. If that's widespread, it has implications for the educational system and the future workforce.
And we can't forget the social fabric, can we?
No. That increased irritability, anxiety, fatigue. When that's common, it strains relationships, hinders teamwork, and can, over time, erode social cohesion. Think about teams working suboptimally, families experiencing more tension.
It really feels like that Buddhist idea of everything being interconnected. Small choices, big ripples.
It really does. Or the Tao Te Ching saying, deal with the small before it gets large. Widespread neglect of something as basic as hydration can grow into significant systemic problems, healthcare costs, lost productivity, even social friction.
Seneca's idea too. No man errs alone. Our individual cognitive slips, maybe partly fueled by dehydration, impact the system.
Exactly. So chronic dehydration isn't just a personal health issue. It has profound societal consequences, healthcare strain, economic costs, productivity loss, even potentially impacting future generations. It's a systemic design flaw, in a way.
Neglecting hydration has real long-term costs for society. Hey, let's bring it back down to the individual level with layer 4. Embodied insight.
Right. So after looking at the big systems, now we dive into the biological reality. How does dehydration actually feel and function within us as biological organisms?
Embodied insight understanding, we're shaped by evolution, our neurochemistry. Dehydration isn't just a thought, it's felt.
Precisely. Our bodies have intricate systems to manage fluids. When we lose water, the concentration of stuff like salt in our blood goes up. Our hypothalamus in the brain detects this change in osmolality.
And that triggers thirst, right? The body's signal.
It does, but as we discussed, research shows thirst often kicks in after we've already lost that crucial 1–2% of body water. So it's a lagging indicator.
Okay, so relying only on thirst means we're often reacting too late.
Pretty much. The damage, or at least the impairment, might already be starting. And this fluid loss messes with our electrolyte balance. Sodium, potassium, magnesium, which are vital for nerve signals.
So the communication system in our body gets disrupted.
Exactly. Which helps explain those cognitive effects, focus, memory issues, and the emotional shifts, irritability, anxiety. Remember that cortisol surge? Up to 60% higher with mild dehydration.
Yeah, that's huge. It makes sense why trying to just calm down when you're dehydrated feels impossible if your whole nervous system is basically in a low-level fight-or-flight state.
Exactly. And it's not just hormonal. EEG studies have shown changes in brainwave patterns like fewer alpha and beta waves associated with focus. fMRI scans suggest less efficient communication between brain networks too.
So our brain literally functions differently, less effectively when dehydrated.
Yes. And chronically, this low-level dehydration can trigger hormonal cascades, like constantly elevated ADH stressing the kidneys, or activating the RAS system linked to high blood pressure.
It feels like our body has these ancient warning systems, but maybe they aren't perfectly tuned for modern life, where we might ignore subtle signals.
That's a good point. Ancient wisdom often emphasized tuning into the body. Buddhist mindfulness includes noticing bodily states like dryness. Ayurveda talks about dryness breeding instability and recommends sipping warm water, connecting hydration to resilience.
Right, and the Bhagavad Gita's goal of samatvam, equanimity, hard to achieve that balance if your physiology is stressed by dehydration and cortisol spikes.
Absolutely impossible, you could argue. True equanimity requires physiological stability. Even the Tao Te Ching's idea, the brittle break, the supple survive, connects to that need for internal balance, which hydration supports.
So, practically speaking, if someone's dealing with chronic fatigue or weird anxiety spikes or muscle cramps, Maybe checking their hydration and electrolyte balance is a good place to start.
It absolutely should be on the checklist. Those somatic signals are important. Thirst is late, cortisol spikes early, nerve signals falter with electrolyte imbalance. Hydration is fundamental neurobiological hygiene.
Okay, neurobiological hygiene, I like that. Which brings us to layer 5, human-centered design. If we know all this, why don't people just drink more water?
The classic knowledge-action gap. Human-centered design looks at why we behave the way we do around hydration and how we can design habits that actually stick.
Because just knowing isn't enough, clearly. What gets in the way?
Several cognitive biases are at play. There's optimism bias. I'll be fine. Dehydration won't really affect me that much.
Right, we underestimate the risk to ourselves.
Then there's present bias. We value immediate ease over future benefits. So getting up to get water feels like more effort now than the benefit of being hydrated later.
And sheer convenience, or lack thereof.
Huge factor. Research highlighted how effort aversion impacts drinking. If water isn't easy to get, we drink less. Social proof matters too. We copy what others do.
If everyone's on coffee, water feels less normal.
Exactly. And sometimes information overload, conflicting advice about how much water, when, with what just leads to confusion and doing nothing.
So our environment, our social context, our own mental shortcuts all conspire against easy hydration.
Pretty much. That's where behavior design principles come in handy. Think BJ Fogg's BMAP model. Behavior equals motivation times ability times prompt. To hydrate more, we need to increase ability, make it easier, increase prompts, reminders, and maybe tap into motivation identity.
Okay, so how do we design for better hydration? Give us some practicals.
Proximity is key. Keep that water bottle visible and close. Use visual prompts, maybe a bottle with time markers or just seeing it reminds you. Habit stacking, link drinking water to something you already do, like after using the restroom or before meals.
Make it social.
Yeah, tribal reinforcement. Encourage colleagues or family. And identity reframing, start seeing yourself as a person who stays hydrated. That can be powerful motivation.
It's funny how these modern design tricks echo ancient practices again.
Totally. Ayurveda's morning water ritual, Ushapakan, Zen tea ceremonies, Islamic wudu, ritual washing, Japanese water therapy, these all build hydration into structured, mindful routines.
So to fix modern hydration death zones, the office, the commute, air travel, we need to consciously design them to make water the easy, obvious choice.
Exactly. Stop nagging, start nudging. Design the environment, reduce the friction, make it social, tie it to identity. Embed hydration into the daily rhythm.
Knowledge isn't behavior. Got it. Okay, layer 6. Risk and resilience. How do we maintain this when life gets crazy?
Right. Resilience here means your hydration strategy holds up under stress, volatility, chaos, because that's often when it fails and when you need it most.
Yeah, when you're stressed or rushed, grabbing water is probably the first thing to go out the window.
Exactly. But think about high-risk scenarios. Intense heat, air travel with that dry cabin air, drinking alcohol, which is a diuretic, even long stretches of deep cognitive work, which can spike cortisol. These demand more hydration awareness, not less.
And biochemically, stress itself makes things worse.
Right. Yes. Your blood gets more concentrated, electrolytes drift, ADH goes up, cortisol spikes. The physiological stress amplifies the dehydration risk. And psychologically, we make excuses. I'll drink later. It's just one day. Coffee counts, right?
So under pressure, we don't rise to the occasion. We fall to the level of our default habits. If hydration isn't a strong default, it breaks.
Precisely. That's why you need resilient hydration protocols. Think preemptive strikes, hydrating before the flight, the workout, the stressful meeting, the night out. Build in during event microhabits rules like sip water every 15 minutes during this task. And have feedback systems, checking urine color, noticing fog, monitoring body weight changes.
Prepare for the storm, have rules for during it, and check the damage after.
Kind of, yeah. Ancient wisdom applies again. Stoic premeditatio malorum, anticipating challenges. The Tao Te Ching praising water's flexible strength resilience through adaptability, not rigidity.
So create resilience rituals, like a hydration preload before known stressors, making the water bottle your armor.
Exactly. Pair hydration with the stressful activity. Embed it in your identity. I'm someone who stays hydrated, especially when things get tough.
Layer 6 takeaway. Stress makes dehydration worse and harder to manage. Your plan needs foresight and robustness.
If it fails under stress, it wasn't a real system. Risk is biochemical. Build a resilient biological armor with water and electrolytes.
Okay, final layer, layer 7. Execution engine. Turning all this insight into consistent daily action. How do we actually do it?
This is where the rubber meets the road. It's about systems over goals, establishing the non-negotiables for daily hydration.
What are those non-negotiables?
Okay, first, a daily fluid intake target. Know your number. Second, electrolyte balance. Water alone isn't always enough, especially if you sweat a lot. Third, timed hydration, spreading it out. Fourth, automaticity, making it a habit. Fifth, sustainability. It has to work long term.
We touched on targets around 3.7 liters total fluid for men, 2.7 for women, including food.
Roughly, yeah, based on general recommendations. Individual needs vary, of course.
And electrolytes, sodium, potassium, magnesium are key.
Crucial for actually absorbing and using the water. A pinch of salt, maybe some potassium chloride, magnesium, or use a formulated mix. Don't overdo it, but don't neglect them.
What about timing? What's a good blueprint?
We talked about some anchors. Definitely upon waking, maybe before meals, during focused work blocks, pre and post exercise are crucial, and then maybe easing off in the evening. Find your rhythm.
And using feedback loops. How do we monitor?
Simple things. Urine color, aim for pale yellow. Brain fog, is it creeping in? Body weight, big drops overnight can indicate dehydration, muscle cramping, or excessive fatigue. Listen to those signals.
And making it stick. Identity, habits.
Yes, tie it to who you want to be. Stack the habit onto existing routines. Use visual anchors, the bottle on the desk. And importantly, treat it like prototyping. Tweak your system until it works reliably for you.
Those ancient rituals, morning water, tea ceremonies, they were essentially execution engines, weren't they? Making it automatic.
Absolutely. They built hydration into the fabric of daily life. That's the goal.
So layer 7, execute. Needs targets, salt balance, timing, feedback loops. Water alone isn't the full picture.
Make it part of your identity. Build the infrastructure, ritualize it, make it sustainable.
Wow. We've gone through all 7 layers for hydration. It really reframed something so basic into something profound, actually.
It touches everything, doesn't it? So maybe 5 quick takeaways to lock it in.
Go for it.
1, thirst means you're likely already late. 2, water is essential, but electrolytes and rhythm matter too. 3, if mood or focus is off, check water and electrolytes first. 4, track your body's signals, they're your feedback. 5, hydration isn't just health, it's neuroprotection.
Your hydration state really is the state of your internal operating system. It affects everything.
Absolutely. And remember this, a clear mind isn't just a motivational state you achieve through willpower.
What is it then?
It's a metabolic achievement, and it starts with water.
Powerful stuff. On that note, that wraps up our deep dive. Thanks for joining us on The Thinking Stack.